Hi, and welcome to Chain Reactions, a weekly live stream from XYZ, the leading global marketing network, and hosted by yours truly, Blake, and my co-host, Polina. Tune in each week as we jam on the latest happenings in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. We're live on Unlonely.app every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, and release the pod every following week on Tuesdays. Now, let's talk Chain Reactions. Dive straight into it. All right. Welcome, folks. This is Chain Reactions, our weekly live stream and podcast where we bring on founders, CMOs, heads of marketing, and just generally all around interesting and awesome people from the world of crypto, on-chain media, and Web3. I'm Blake, co-founder of Mycin, and I got Polina, our amazing community lead. Say hi, Polina.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
And we're really excited to have Satvik on today. Satvik is the homie. He's got a heart of gold. He is a great person to have in this space, and we're really excited to talk to him all around offline protocol and all the cool stuff he's building. And honestly, I feel like the narrative I feel like the meta has even shifted in just the past couple of months. So it's pretty amazing to see. But how you doing, Satvik?
Good, man. Thank you for having me. Excited to chat. I know we've had like a lot of conversations around offline, just like over dinners, but it'll be fun to get into it more formally and professionally today, hopefully.
Yes, exactly. It'll be good. And I think the world needs to kind of hear the story more and more because, I think you agree that like in this space especially, there's so much there's a lot of funding going towards things where you're like, do we need another DEX? Do we need another L1? Do we need another thing that does the same thing that the other thing did and they extracted value? And so really excited to get into it. But maybe to kick things off, I think the way we always approach it with guests is we always love to hear the human story first. So could you tell us a bit more about yourself, your journey, and how you even got into crypto and this whole blockchain space in general, and then obviously how that led to offline and what you're doing now.
I don't know if like you've ever heard this story too, actually, but like I was an international student. I was doing my undergrad in New York, and that's when I started my first company, which was called Runaway. And Runaway was a mental health venture focused on young people's mental health. Built out for the 4 years I was in school. Did a lot of research and policy work with UNICEF, World Health Organization, South America. Worked with the United Nations on a number of initiatives as well while I was in school. So for me, like social impact, I would say, was really a very fundamental part of where I associate entrepreneurship and being able to build things with. I've always had that like inclination to use tech for good in a way. And so I think that was really the starting point for me. And by the time I graduated college, Runaway was acquired by a teletherapy startup. So it was kind of my first taste of building products, getting to that stage. And I was kind of looking out for what's next for me. And straight out of school, I just happened to stumble upon Clubhouse in those early days. And at the time, I used to host rooms for like mental health again on Clubhouse. And it's a really funny story because I just very accidentally stumbled into crypto. I was doing this mental health room, left it at like 2 a.m, and just randomly on my feed, I saw Blau was hosting a room that said buying $25,000 worth of NFTs. And I was like, what are, because like I am just out of school. I'm always looking for avenues to like make money. And so what are these things? And so I ended up like spending that night just staying up, reading about NFTs, doing all sorts of like research, figuring out what's this like new movement starting, how creators are benefiting off of it. And just got really like interested in that. So ended up joining a lot more Clubhouse rooms over the next few weeks. Started like making some friends in the space, started buying a few early NFT collections, as well as like started putting out my own music and art as NFTs. And that's really like what got me hooked. I'd kind of like bought a little bit of crypto before that, but I never really like, it was just another asset to me. It wasn't really community or, creators or any of that. It was just an investment back then. But I think after that, like Clubhouse room, there was a fundamental shift where I really started to very actively see this like new primitive emerging, which I wanted to participate in. And even my like Twitter went from a mental health Twitter to like over time a complete like crypto NFT Twitter, which it is now. So yeah, that's kind of like how I got my TLDR on how I got into crypto initially.
Once you fall down the rabbit hole, you can never come back out.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
lost all my mental health followers, but I gained new ones. So it is what it is.
You went from one side to the other.
I know.
Polina, do you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, and so you fell into the NFT rabbit hole. And then what happened after? Because you said that you were sort of deciding what's next for you, right? What's your next new
Mhm.
venture? Some offline protocol was not the first, like you just got into crypto, then you're like, let me build offline protocol. There was something
Yeah,
bridge
yeah.
in between.
Yeah,
What was
so,
that?
I mean, like, after that, so this was, like, 2020 into 2020 to then, like, into 2021, and after school, I joined MasterCard full time. And so that was in, May 2020, I joined MasterCard full time. Um, and I was, like, on a few different teams before that, but in 2021, I was really getting into, again, very publicly, I would say, into this space, through Twitter, making a lot of
Mm-hmm.
friends through different NFT communities that I was joining, getting, like, very actively engage in clubhouse rooms and all of this. And eventually the momentum shifted where even in my like workplace at MasterCard, these conversations started to come up more and more. I was talking to the CEO at the time, Ajay Banga, about just how I viewed crypto and NFTs. And
Mm.
there was this like fundamental moment I remember where Visa had just bought a CryptoPunk towards the end of 2021, and everyone was talking about it. And leading
Mm.
up to this point, I'd been talking about crypto and NFTs at work for a few weeks. But when this happened, that same day on my way to work, I like emailed a screenshot of this news article to every
Mm.
single person that I was interfacing with at the company and said, like, we should probably also think about this space now.
Mm-hmm.
And that same day, I got called to Mr. Banga's office, and he said, "Look, you clearly understand the space, and you bring us a lot of problems, but not enough solutions about it. So yeah, I mean, that was like word for word what he told me,
Fair,
right? That
fair.
would you like to actually work on finding the solutions as well? And so literally on the moment,
Nice.
I got promoted to global product lead for Web3 at MasterCard. And from that point on, at the end of 2021 to 2023, I was really like leading their entire kind of gateway into this world. So
Mm.
help them and a lot of their Fortune 500 clients do everything: token gated activations, metaverse experiences, NFT launches, crypto payment products. And really was kind of that like core point of contact for a lot of this interfacing about Web3 at the time, was what was the popular term for it. And so I like really led that entire kind of entry there. At the same time, I continued kind of my journey in, on
Yep.
the Twitter side of things. I was building communities, advising NFT projects. I co-founded Relief in 22, where we raised 2 million for charities in Ukraine through NFTs. Did a bunch of like
Mm-hmm.
other,
I think I
brought a
remember
few,
that. I
yeah,
think I
Yeah,
bought
me
with
that. That
too.
was
with
sick.
Andrew
Rings a
Wang and a
bell.
few other friends. So it was fun. I mean,
Nice.
we had a lot of good times. We brought in a lot of like NGOs and organizations into crypto, helped a lot of these like
Yeah.
places like Mental Health America and Gamers Outreach fundraise using crypto. So again, like I've always tried to find that connection between social impact and tech. And again, for crypto, for me, just presented another way of doing it, right? Because this was a really cool new primitive which allowed for communal fundraising for things that you were passionate about, whether it is, charity, whether it is creator economies, whether it is digital worlds through like a metaverse, whatever you want to call it. I was just
Mm-hmm.
very fascinated by the primitive, and so that's what I've always tried to do, is just find more
Yeah.
opportunities to leverage that aspect of crypto. And yeah, 23 resigned from Mastercard. I started my second company, which was called Anoka, which was a crypto consumer social. Built that for about 4 or 5 months. Ended up selling that in January last year. Went back in the job market, was looking at what's next for me.
Yeah.
Ended up with some cool offers to lead ecosystem at a bunch of L1s and L2s. But again, 5 years into crypto, just felt extremely jaded by how
Yeah.
much. I mean, I'm sure you guys see it from your
Yeah. Yeah.
perspective. Like the conversation's very heavily centered around boosting TVL and getting airdrop farmers. And there's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
not a lot of just conversation around, again,
It's not
leveraging that.
inspiring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly. It's not like, something that I really wanted to dedicate the end of my 20s to. And it's not something
Yep.
that necessarily is aligned with why I was fascinated by crypto in the first place. And so, I had these great offers, but something in me just said, like, this is not what I want to do. And I still have time to take a risk. And so I ended up turning down the offers that I had. And offline protocol was something that had been in my drafts for, a few years now. because I've always seen this need for alternative networking, for resilient systems to do a lot of these things. And so I ended up turning down the offers, and literally 2 weeks later, on April 1st last year, I announced Offline Protocol and had no idea what we're going to do, what this is actually going to end up becoming. But I just knew that like I wanted to figure that out. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, here we are today.
Awesome. Um, and what is the Offline Protocol in 1 minute or less,
Wait,
or your dinner pitch?
Yeah,
wait,
Blake,
real
did you?
quick before we get. Yes,
Yeah.
I do want to get an offline, but real quick, I think there's so much rich territory to unpack right there of just like your journey from like Clubhouse and like discovering NFTs through Blau of all people, right? That was a wild time if you
I
were
know.
there. I remember those Clubhouse days of like, what the fuck? Like, and we were all locked in our houses in COVID to your journey on MasterCard. And like,
Mhm.
I think newer joiners might not like, I don't know. It's weird. Like I say newer and it was only a couple years ago, right? But it feels like a lifetime ago
Yeah,
when like every company in the world was really interested in crypto and Web3 and blockchain. And it feels like
Metaverse.
in the past year or two, they've all just kind of disappeared. And I'm sure they'll come back now that, you know, the regulation is changing and stable coins, whatever. But I guess like, I, I just want to like sit in that for a second too, I guess, because that is quite the journey. And I'm also curious about like, maybe like if you have any hot takes, I guess, on like how companies you think might eventually come back or be interested in the space as someone who's working with those types of corporates at the time. And, you know, the
yeah,
narrative is always shifting, right? And all this stuff around consumer crypto, which we were very excited by, like we were a C Club company. So we were, you know, we were also like thinking about that quite a bit, but it feels also like that kind of died out, right? Because then it's
yeah,
just like pure
yeah.
speculation, it's the casino, etc. So it's been shifting. But would love to just kind of, I don't know, like get your hot take on that. And then yes, then there's a lot of really cool stuff to dive into with
For
offline,
sure.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're also a C Club company, by the way. Shout out C Club. They're also our
Shout out C
investment.
Club.
Huge. Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's a great question because it's definitely something that I've noticed over the years of working in this space. I call that like old generation of companies, like the WAGMI companies. You know, that was like their
The whack we got.
cringe
Yeah.
crypto marketing, but it's like interesting because I think back then, 21, when I was starting to do this for MasterCard and seeing a lot of these, again, just brands, names that we all like love and see on a daily basis when they were getting into crypto, it was very much because of the marketing they were getting from it.
Hmm.
They didn't care about what they were doing. There was no intentional effort across the
Hmm.
board about how they could use crypto meaningfully, right? It wasn't something that they wanted to really integrate across the stack of their company. They didn't really think about building products. So it was really an era of a lot of these agencies that came up and did really well for that like period where these
Yeah.
agencies just like would deploy NFT collections on your behalf. They would, I mean, Visa's CryptoPunk, Visa never touched it. It was like bought and held by another escrow company, right? And so it was just that like era of companies that were finding these new revenue streams because they could now effectively move much
Yeah.
quicker than the corporates. And the corporates
Mm-hmm.
couldn't move that fast. And so they were finding these
Yeah.
agencies, these third party companies to create these things for them just so they could get the marketing benefits from it. So if XYZ company said we're launching an NFT collection, they're simply doing the comms for it. The actual
Yeah.
launch, understanding what the tech is, understanding what the design is going to be, all of that like logistics was handled by somebody else. And so, and even when we ended up doing these campaigns with these companies, the discussion was never about the success from a product angle, right? They were just like the
Yeah.
success metrics were purely defined on like traction, on visibility, how many like
Yeah.
hits did they get on their website, how many news outlets covered them, what kind of global media coverage they got from this activation. So it's very
Yeah.
much focused on that side of things. And again, because NFTs are no longer relevant, we saw a decline over the years, right? Like somebody that did
Yeah.
a metaverse in like a Decentraland activation in 21
Yeah.
had an insane amount of free organic exposure from every media outlet. And if that same
Yeah.
company or another company tried to do it in 23, nobody really gave a shit because it wasn't as cool or as unique to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Same with like NFT collections, everything else. So eventually they just stopped doing it because there was no free
Yeah.
marketing exposure, right? The they would have to invest like $500,000 to $1 million to get the exposure they were getting from paying an agency $20,000 to deploy a collection, right? And so that
Yep.
asymmetric bet at some point stopped being cool. So they left because for them that
Yep.
was all it was ever.
Value
But
extracted onto the
yeah,
next.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't even say necessarily like extraction, right? Because for them, it was never really, they never saw it as a revenue stream. It didn't
Yeah.
make any difference to them. For them, it was always just marketing. And
Experiment.
Yeah.
every brand is like, you guys again know this best, but it's all about keeping the brand relevant. And that just kept
Yeah.
them, relevant, allowed them to connect with this new audience that had a lot of money to spend. And so it just like worked for them. But I think what we're seeing now with this resurgence of brands coming in
Yeah.
is there's a fundamental shift in who you're talking to at that company.
Mm,
Back in the day, you were talking to their marketing folks, whereas today
yeah.
you're
Mm-hmm.
talking to most likely their product folks. Which has shown that there is this like change that's taken place where they no longer view this space as marketing, but really as meaningful technology that can be integrated into their existing,
Yes.
right? And so
Mm.
that's I think the biggest shift because back then, even though I was the product person on MasterCard, I was only talking to marketing people on the other side. Whereas now,
Mm-hmm.
like when I talk about these companies, it's always most likely either the strategy people, the product people. And so it just
Mm,
shows more initiative that they want to do something more with this tech. And I think especially because there's so much positive regulation now, there really is that openness to what can we do with this, right? Brands are experimenting with accepting stablecoins for payments, for example, which is awesome. We're seeing companies like Stripe that have literally
yeah.
in the past like banned crypto companies from using their services and now like acquiring crypto companies and like potentially
Launching
launch.
their own blockchain.
Yeah, exactly.
Jokes on you.
And so I think like all those things are just inevitable. They've always been inevitable, but I think now, especially with this like renewed interest, we've really shown through our grit that we're here to stay and this technology can be pretty impactful. And so I think now we're gonna see more serious participants, so to speak. I don't think like Coca-Cola and like these brands are necessarily gonna have
Yeah.
anything to do in this new wave, but we'll see more of these like Stripe type of companies that are like serious businesses that can benefit from like new financial rails will come back for this like second round of brand activations.
Which I think, by the way, this is like a. Oh, sorry, Paulina, go ahead. I was
No,
gonna
go
say,
for it.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I think this is a super great transition point into. I'm realizing offline, right? Talking about this next wave of adoption, about real use cases. Can you tell the world a little about offline? The idea itself, kind of like how it came about, how it's evolved. Because I think what I've been seeing lately with kind of like offline payments and stuff is kind of, it seems like an evolution from my side. But you tell me, like, how's that? What is offline? What is it today, and how's it evolved? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so let me give you the catalyst on this first, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I've grown up in India. India leads the global rankings in government imposed internet blackouts. We had, I think, 85 last year. It's the highest in the world right now. We're probably going to cross 100 this year. It's just like cutting off internet access is just used as like crowd control for anything, whether it is political censorship, people protesting, kids having
Mm.
exams in a
Yeah.
particular city. Like they'll just cut off internet for anything and everything. And so that's something I've seen over the years. It's something that's like really challenged kind of my worldview, especially when I moved abroad for school and stuff. I was like, oh, that's actually not normal for that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
that way and that
Mm-hmm.
frequently, especially. So I think that was always in the back of my mind and just seeing like people I care about deeply that are still, here
Yeah.
to see them like still continuing to face those things even today. I'm like, okay, cool. This is like something that maybe needs to be challenged somehow. So that was the first thing. The second was when the
Mm,
war in Ukraine started in 22. A couple of friends and I, like I was saying earlier, we did this fundraiser. We raised the money in crypto, sent it out to organizations in crypto. Now, what happened at the time was the traditional payment processors had turned off their payment rails in the region because they were sanctioned. So people couldn't use their bank
Mm-hmm.
accounts. ATMs would run
oh.
cash. And we say crypto is censorship resistant, but there was no internet at the time. And so the money that we sent to
Mm,
these organizations, a lot of them actually couldn't even use it further because they didn't have access to internet. And so I kind of just directionally started thinking about how that is a huge bottleneck because if we can't spend our
mm,
crypto when there's no internet, like, is it really that censorship resistant? Because
Mm-hmm.
ISPs are pretty vulnerable, right? Governments can. I've seen it. switch off the internet at the click of a button. So I just
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about what else. I started doing some research, started seeing like, has anybody in crypto ever even like thought about this? And obviously the only ones who have were the Bitcoin community and the Doge community. It's just like really cool to see, and shout out to both of them for like being true OGs in this space. And so, that's something that I'd started doing some research on. I was putting a blog post together. And then later that year, when political protest started in Iran, again, was looking at like building privacy messaging app for people to just be able to, again, organize better, share information better, and ended up getting a cease and desist from this like SDK provider we were using, saying not to use their tech in a sanctioned country. And so that was that like next catalyst of cool, there's ways that you can essentially circumvent like the censorship that occurs, but again, it's controlled so much by these like centralized entities that access can still be gated easily. And so I had this blog post, I've been working on it. It was like sitting in my drafts, like all good ideas for 2 years. And ultimately, like last year when I ended up like turning down those offers, I said like, honestly, this is what I really should be working on, because we're seeing an increase in censorship across the world. We're seeing an increase in geopolitical conflict, but even on like lesser, we're seeing, stuff like natural disasters that are happening more and more
Yep.
frequently. Even like fun stuff, people are just traveling more, going to more like music festivals and sporting events and all these things. And so there's a lot of moments in our life where communication, payments, all these things become really vulnerable because of the lack of connectivity. And I just thought we can actually use the like crypto primitives and bootstrap these
Yep.
networks in a way where we can actually have this kind of like people powered availability of infrastructure. And that's really what offline protocol now is like aiming to become, where we want to build out this people powered infrastructure for Bluetooth based mesh networking. And then on top of that, build our own apps for messaging, payments, information sharing that again can just be used without any internet or telecom services.
Yes. And it's an exciting thing because I'm realizing this is thinking in my head. I was like, we've gone quite deep into this. And I was like, we haven't actually, I think we got so into the weeds of the journey that we're like, what is offline? It's like that's really at the end of the day what it comes down to, right? Is enabling people, as you're talking about, to go offline, to interact with others and do these things that, as you're saying, like people take we take for granted, I guess, in the developed world, as one might
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
right? I do have to ask you a question, and I think I know you've heard it a billion times before, but I think like dispel the notion, right? And this kind of gets into a different question I think we had queued up around like investor sentiment and common feedback you've heard. But and I'm only asking you so you can kind of like put this out and we could clip this and you can share this with other people. But like, why not Starlink? Why can't you just use Starlink? I'm
Yeah,
sure you've
Jess
heard
is
that a
gonna
billion
see
times
this
before.
and be like, yeah, I hope Jess sees this. But
I'll
yeah, I
send
mean,
this to Jess.
it's a valid question, right? I get this question a lot. Obviously, every time I pitch a VC, they're always like, "Oh, but what about Starlink?" And there's always this like air of
Yeah,
arrogance they feel asking that question, like, "Ha, gotcha."
yeah,
But it's not really, right? Because I think it's a gotcha when you're thinking about like people in New York, but it's not when you're
yeah,
thinking about people in a village in India, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the fundamental difference in the populations that crypto currently serves versus where I'm very
yeah,
passionate about getting crypto. I think when we think about crypto and why prediction markets and all these things are currently the most successful products is because we're only thinking of it from this myopic lens of people in these privileged places, right? They see these things as cool. Like, this is what I want to do. It's a nice to have. But for a lot of the world right now, it is a necessity to have basic
yeah,
connectivity, which they still don't have access to. So when we think about Starlink, there's three core factors, which I'm not saying Starlink sucks, right? I think Starlink is great for if you can access it. But the
yeah,
issue is, one, people have a high degree of cost barriers with Starlink.
mm,
The
Yeah.
current cost of hardware installation, monthly subscriptions is extremely cost prohibitive to a large part of
Mm-hmm.
the world still. Where in
mm,
India, for example, you can get data for like $1
mm-hmm,
per month. Starlink, even now, they just literally like this week or last week introduced a $5 a month pricing plan. It's still
right,
5x what's available in India already for people, and it's still
mm,
cost prohibitive to a lot of people. Right? You still can't get it for like your family or whatever.
yeah,
Um, So that's one. Second is availability. Because Starlink is satellite based, you need regulatory approval, which
Mm,
again, like, is hard to get and hard to scale. There's a lot of like a lot of countries that have straight up banned it. If you're caught with like a Starlink,
mm.
you
Mm-hmm.
can be arrested. I mean, people have been like literally slaughtered in some parts of the world for like
It's
using,
crazy.
like, smuggling Starlinks illegally and stuff. So regulatory approval is another big barrier. And
Mm-hmm.
third, I think, which separates offline protocol to what Starlink can do, is the like instant portability of it. If
Mm,
I'm like stuck in a natural disaster, I don't have power at my house, Starlink is not working for me, but offline protocol is. If I'm like
mm,
traveling with my friends internationally, we run out of data, we can still communicate with offline. We can't like carry our Starlink everywhere. If I'm at a music festival, I'm not gonna like
mhm.
backpack my Starlink with me. So all these instances, right, where you can have instant connectivity, that's where
Yep.
offline
Yeah.
protocol can like ease your pain points compared to Starlink. And so I think that's really the main things that I'm focused on. There's obviously other stuff like you've degradation because of weather conditions, you have like range limitations. So all these things compound over time. But I think the basic thing that we're trying to solve for over any other thing today is just the availability and accessibility of it, because I think that is still the biggest hindrance for a large part of the world, which is
Mm-hmm.
also why we were very deliberate that our apps or products should always be like mobile friendly. I don't want to sell hardware. I don't want to like make it cost prohibitive. I don't want to make
Yep.
it so I have to like struggle to ship something to someone in some part of the world. Like, if you have a phone, you can use our products, and whether you use it with like your best friend or you use it with your entire neighborhood, that's up
Yep.
to you. But two people and you're good to go, right?
So, people are quite familiar with how Starlink works and what it is. How does one interact with offline protocol? Because you kind of touch base on it, but like around. So
Let's get into the
how
nitty
does one
gritty.
interact?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
How
so
do
so
you use
we
it?
use Bluetooth basically. So Bluetooth is what enables our entire architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to use any of our products is simply through a mobile app. So whether, it doesn't matter if you have our messaging app, which is available right now, or in the future you have our payments app or information sharing app, as long as you have one of our apps on your phone, you become part of this one unified offline protocol network. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could just like do everything on that network. And the only,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, limitation here is that Bluetooth has a limited range of 30 to 50 meters per node. So you have to be within this
Mm,
30 to 50-meter distance of other nodes around you. That doesn't mean sender and receiver have to be that far apart. You should just have enough people between you to relay the message forward. But I think the
Mm-hmm.
cool behavior that we've seen emerge over time as we're bringing our products out in the market is people are actually like creating their own networks. What that means is they're not like going to Coachella and then hoping that they find other offline protocol users there. Instead, they're actually
mm,
making all their friends, family, whoever it is, on board already and then going out with them. So now they don't
Mm.
need to find, other people to make their network. Those six people in a friend group are making their network. Uh, and I think that behavior is really cool because it kind of makes that question redundant of like, what if there's no one around? Like, take your people with you.
Mm-hmm.
I've
mm,
seen people like onboard their husband or wife. I've seen people onboard their neighbors. Anyone that you think you might need to have this app. Like, if it's a natural disaster, you want to communicate with your neighbors, great if they
Yeah.
have it. You're going out to like traveling.
Yeah.
So it, create your own networks. And I think over time, as more and more people have their own networks, those networks will start to find each other and, become more expansive.
yep.
Like this year, we had two friend groups using this at Coachella. Maybe next year we'll have 10. And then
Mm-hmm.
at some point, those networks will start to connect with each other and expand the mesh. So that's kind of like what our long-term vision is with this.
So it's like an inbuilt referral mechanism that kind
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
keeps the
Yeah.
app growing. I think here's your product marketing background comes into play, because usually it's like token KOLs and something, but like built in this kind of mechanism into product is something that requires the product team being involved. And to your point earlier, that it's not just the marketing teams now, it's also like the product,
Yeah.
right, and the strategy and stuff. I think that brings us kind of to the question where we so you went like from stealth basically to hundreds of thousands of users, right? Without using a token, without quests or paid campaigns. this is like a a Web3 founder's dream. It's like when marketing now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how did it happen?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I want to say luck, honestly, a lot of it. I think I'd be like really egoistical to not acknowledge the role that luck plays in
Yeah.
success always. But I think for us, it's, where people are surprised when I tell them we're a 4-person team. Offline protocol entirely is
Yep.
2 engineers, 1 PM, and myself, and that's the team. We've been
Mm,
building now for almost a year, relentlessly every single day, and just like trying to put stuff out there. We go through these like ups and downs of being super active on social and then just like shutting up and just building, building, building. And then we'll like start, like now I've started warming up that, offline pay is coming soon, essentially. But we've been very deliberate about not wasting time doing things that like
mhm,
are not beneficial to us in that moment, which I think a lot of teams fail at. Is they think they have to like constantly be putting out garbage in order to just like stay on top of people's minds, right? Like
Yeah.
they'll
Well,
accounts like
oftentimes it's like investor pressure, right?
yeah,
They're like,
I
oh,
mean
you
whatever
gotta
it
like
is.
grow your mind share, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll have like teams coming in every day that just will post a GM and leave and not have anything meaningful to say until like 8 weeks later when their actual like test net is supposed to drop. But I don't think you really need to do that because your test net will pop up on its own, when the time is right. So I think that's definitely one thing we've been really intentional about is not, and this is just learning from like past mistakes, right? We're not trying to constantly be relevant. We're not trying to constantly
Mm,
be marketing. Only when we have something
mhm,
important to say is when we show up and say it. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I think is like really work for us is personal storytelling again. I think a lot
mm,
of brand accounts, people are tired of brand accounts in general. I think brand accounts have this tone regardless of how like, how much of a crypto lead and all these things you want to bring into it. I think ultimately a brand account is still a brand account and it feels very impersonal when they're the ones
mm,
talking to you. With offline, it's almost been very intentional that usually even announcements, like I tend to make them first from my account versus from a brand account. And I let friends, people who follow me, people who've interacted with me over the years, like engage with it, right? People ask questions on that post. I answer it personally. So you're always hearing it directly from the founder versus this like
mhm,
company account who you've no idea runs what the intention behind it is, whatever. Right now, I talk about everything that we do. People have this like personal touch point. Everyone knows my Telegram, my DMs are always open. So I'm always like the point of contact for all of these things. And then the final thing is what I was saying earlier is just we've been able to tap into a really beautiful referral network almost where every one user that we onboard is by default bringing on 2 to 5 new users with them because this doesn't work unless you have that personal network onboarded. And so everyone like is bringing on their personal networks for most part.
mhm.
And I think that's the other beauty of it because we'll continue to see that. I hate the term flywheel, but like it is a flywheel at this point where they
Yeah.
like continue to bring more and more of those users on. So I think like those are really the fundamental things. But I think the biggest key really is that like authenticity is really missing from a lot of these
Mhm,
accounts today where you're buying like your Kaito yaps and you're doing all of this stuff, but you're kind of losing the soul, right? And so for me, it's
mhm,
very much still focused
mm,
on I share my issues with tech
mm.
today. I share my issues with like my internet not working. I see you guys pretty blurry right now on this call, right? And so and
yeah.
over everyone. I think airdrops and things is really it's trying to buy everyone to become a user and
Mhm,
give them
mhm,
Yep.
all the airdrops you want. But if your product is not for them, they won't stick around. Versus with us, the way that we've gone to market, we're only aligning with people who care about this kind of tech. And so
mhm,
naturally the
Yep.
people that they onboard also care about this tech. And so our stickiness like becomes higher and higher.
mhm. Did you, with you being intentional and not, racking up those numbers in, requests or yaps or whatever, did you have any pushback from, the investor side? Also, like Blake said, because there's a lot of pressure a lot of the times from investors to like have this, cloud going for you, have the mind share. Did you have any pushback at all, or how did you deal with their bearishness? Because you recently announced the raise. right?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually like we closed our raise in December last year, but we just like didn't announce it because again, I stopped caring for social validation from crypto Twitter, so I wasn't like rushed to put it out there.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's been
Let's
like
go.
now like 8 9 months since we like closed our pre-seed, but um, no, I think like we got really lucky with our investors. Everyone being like super aligned. They're very hands on if I need them to be. They're very hands off other times, and
Hmm.
there's this like level of trust that they've instilled in me
Hmm.
to do things my way. Every now and then they'll share insight, they'll share ideas, they'll offer to bring me connections or people I might look to hire, but it's never been like you should be doing this. I can always have a healthy dialogue with them, which has been really nice. I also think that they're enjoying the authenticity for a large part.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll tweet something and one of our investors will DM it to me being like, this is good. This is like good tweet or like cool story, whatever. And so
Yes.
I think again that's something as a founder, like you should be really, really careful about the people that you bring on board your journey because it does have a
Hmm.
huge impact. And with our fundraising, I said no to a few investors, right? Which is crazy to
Yep.
think about because a few years ago, as I was building, I would have like killed to have somebody on board. Like I would have said yes to anybody that wanted to be a part of this journey. But that's another thing with offline. I was like very intentional about who we bring on board. And there were people that just wanted us to launch a token and like do all these things. And I was like, you're probably not the best fit for us. And that's still true today. I've like turned down people even recently because it's your baby and like you really want to protect
Yep.
it as much as you can. If you're doing something good, like money, resources, they will align themselves eventually. It might take a bit longer, but it will happen for you. But just like taking the money for like the sake of having it, I think it's like the worst thing you could do for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been lucky in that
And
sense.
and I want to chime in on that, and because I think you said a couple things. Sorry, I'm just always like collecting the thoughts
Yeah,
and like what you're. There's so many gold nuggets in there, right? And I think earlier, even when you talked about like um, luck was definitely a factor, but I don't. I feel, and I'm sure a lot of people feel similarly. Of like you do create your own luck, right? And it's been really awesome to see you just kind of like in the trenches for the past year, just like grinding this out, building this. And I think authenticity, as you're saying, it is because it's kind of like marketing 101 of like if everyone's zigging, you want to zag, right? Because that's what's going to help you stand out. And I think in a space like this, which fortunately does have a lot of value extractors and people who are just doing the thing to do the thing, that's where authenticity, as you're saying, really can be your superpower because it's like a breath of fresh air, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. And it sounds like your investors, right? So it's like, so I guess that's kind of what I meant by this is like it's if you put the right energy out into the world sometimes in the right circumstances, it kind of pulls and attracts the right types of people rather than having a hope. I don't know, like whatever the alternative is, right? Which so many
yeah, yeah.
companies
I
do.
mean,
Yeah.
I think I completely agree with that because yeah, I will say like luck's definitely played a part, but also there have been times where I've like fought really hard for like
Yeah.
things that we have, right? Even I remember it's always a really funny story sharing this, but like when we got into Alliance DAO, um,
Mm-hmm.
like that was last when we were in Singapore together last year. That's
Yeah.
when I like had met Chow for my like final round,
Yeah.
and I was pretty sure I bombed it. I was like, this was a horrible interview because like it just Chow just has this
Uh,
like demeanor. I hope he sees this and like laughs about it. Chow just has this like demeanor where you just don't know what he's like thinking. And I was like very confident that this just like sucked because he just did not seem like he cared about offline at all. And at that time, we
Hmm.
really had nothing, right? It was more an idea with a product we were trying to build at the time. I was trying to give him a demo and it just didn't work. And I was like, shit, this is this is as bad as it can get. And then as I left that meeting, I sent him literally like a 5 paragraph long message, which was like, I won this really, really bad. And like, even though the demo bombed and like this might be a very like crazy out of the like blue thing for Alliance to look at, it's just something that like nobody in crypto is thinking about, talking about. Like,
mm-hmm.
I really want you to take this bet on me because I know I can make something happen and I just need like one person to
Nice.
believe in me. And I like it was like the most desperate plea I've ever written, and it was like very raw. And I got left on red. Like Chaz,
Oh, on
No.
Telegram? You
yeah,
like send it and you get the
yeah.
two.
So
Oh man.
now like Chow saw that, and I never heard
Yeah.
back until the last day that I had in Singapore last year for Token. And it
Yeah.
was the last night when I was in Singapore. So I met him on my first day in Singapore, and on my last night
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I
was
got
that
a
when you guys were out like by the water and
yeah,
like
yeah, and
I saw yeah.
I got a message from Chow saying like, "Hey, like you're a crazy bet, but we want to make it, and so congrats! Like we'll send you the paperwork on Monday, right?" And so
Let's
like that's
go.
what I mean. Where definitely luck and stuff played its part, but also like I was desperate and like
You
really,
gotta
really,
put
really
yourself out there.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. I
Mhm.
was like, I would rather shoot the shot than like always wonder what if, right? And I really like want to make this happen. And so I think also just like doing that kind of intentional acts should most
Yeah.
times like go a very long way if you could showcase that passion to people.
Mm.
Mhm.
Lesson learned.
Yeah,
Always shoot your shot, folks. You know,
100%.
you
I
never
mean,
know.
that
What
was
do you
just
have
like
to lose? What's the downside? You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
someone
there's
says
this
no.
quote that
Yeah.
like
Yes.
and I like have it's really stuck by me all these years because that's one thing like whether it was my internship at MasterCard and my job
Yeah.
I've built, like I've just always raised my hand and like made sure that I'm being noticed by the people who should be noticing me.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
people are like, people are afraid of putting themselves out there because they're like, oh, this will come off really cringe, or I'm like afraid to be perceived by somebody else. Like, who cares, man? Like,
Yeah.
life is short. This is ultimately
Nobody
like,
cares. Nobody is paying attention
yeah,
to you. They're all
no,
paying
nobody's
attention to
paying
themselves.
attention to you. It's your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and so you would rather like not miss out because you're worried somebody else is going to judge you for it.
Satvik, I do, unfortunately, because I want to run this over, honestly, on the clock, but we have unfortunately today we have a hard stop. But I do want to dive into a couple other things very quickly before we go into rapid fire, which
Mhm.
is would love to learn a bit more about like the user base and the community, because like we got all these users, but like who are they? I think it's a lot, and just like kind of speed run a little bit. I think it's generally like concert attendees is definitely a demographic, and then there's a whole bunch of other folks. So like, how has that journey been? How are you interacting with those folks? And then I want to hear a bit about the payment side, because I know you've been kind of teasing that out, and I think even I'm not fully aware of like
Yeah,
exactly how that's going to play out. So curious about those two things, and then we'll probably have to move to rapid fire, unless there's,
cool.
and Paulina, chime in if there's anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll do this quick, but essentially for us, we've been very unopinionated from the start on who our like demographic is going to be. When I started offline, I was very much focused on like people displaced by war, natural
Yeah.
disasters, very like humanitarian aspects because that's where I come from. But just interacting with people over this like past year of building, I've really heard like any and every use case, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the beauty of it. We've been like making sure our products don't look like they're built for any one use.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the
Mhm.
adoption we're seeing, right? Because we had same week we had users at Coachella, we had users at a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. Same week we had users at uh, Tokyo during the flooding that happened recently, and same week it's like
Yeah.
any and every use case where you need connectivity.
Wow.
We
How
felt
are you getting in touch with them, by the way?
Yeah, I
Like,
was
are they
just
emailing
wondering.
you? Like, because you're not,
yeah, I
you're
mean
online.
mostly email
Twitter?
and
Yeah.
TikTok.
Mm.
And
You got to
so
collect those stories, man. You got
I
to
know
like have an
like,
aggregator or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
and for
Mhm.
like till the end of this year, we're gonna continue to be very unopinionated. I think
Yeah.
like maybe early next year we'll then see where we're seeing like most interest regionally in
Yeah.
use case wise, and then might start to double down on stuff. But for
Mhm.
now, it's just beautiful to kind of like get these stories of how and where people are using us.
I love that. And then payments.
The
How's that
payments.
kind
Yeah,
of play
so
into all
payments
this?
there.
And then
So
what is the on-chain part to all this? I'm assuming that's where the on-chain element comes
yeah,
in, right?
yeah. So to like give you a quick TLDR, basically when you think about offline payments, there's two popular models, SI in Kenya, ATM in India. They both have an offline model wherein you essentially use SMS to do real-time settlements. So you have like a preloaded wallet. M-Pesa, you have to on-ramp through cash agents. So you give them cash, they on-ramp you into this like mobile banking system that uses SMS. ATM, you could do it digitally by connecting your bank account, and then like you could do SMS payments. But again, both of them require telecom to still work because you need to be
Right.
able to send these SMS messages. On the other side, in crypto, there's nothing that you could do. So we built like something where you could do like SMS real time settlements, but again, you need like SMS. And so my goal really here was can we do something that works fully offline? No internet, no telecom.
Mm,
And no internet, no telecom. I don't want users to then also have to come online once a day to like sync all the cash transactions to chain every day. I want they could be offline for like 6 months to a year if they want to be without like any
Mhm.
mhm,
dependencies. And so that's where we've like designed our own novel system of doing it. Offline protocols for infrastructure plus offline ID, which is our like social graph. Both are very instrumental in enabling this out because the metadata and all the information that's captured becomes really relevant. And yeah, that's the on-chain component because essentially we can collateralize any stablecoins on any chain into these
mhm,
universally spendable offline dollars, and these offline dollars are what you can transact with forever. You don't need to go back
mm,
online. You don't need to go back on chain. You can then just like use these anywhere. So right now to start, it'll obviously be P2P, but
mhm,
eventually we also want to do like POS SDKs so people can spend it like on POS systems with tap to pay and
yeah,
things. We're like exploring QR code payments, NFC payments, and essentially just like a cool new primitive to spend your
yeah.
stable coins fully offline.
Whoa,
That's fun.
that's exciting. Wait, so then how does it? So how am I loading up my stables onto my offline account, and
So you're
then
like
does it?
you like on like a coin
Yeah.
and deposit, and then you get a
Mhm.
you get a universal offline dollar balance.
Oh, okay, cool. And then it just creates its own economy, and because I do see a huge like messaging is obviously important, but if you're offline your messaging, it makes sense that payments would be the next big
Yeah,
thing
and a lot of
connected
like
to it.
being able
Yeah,
to get stable coins is amazing because they have like extremely volatile native currencies, and so we can stabilize our native currency into a stable coin. It's amazing
yeah.
for them.
There's so many like fun marketing things. We should just catch up, and I'm happy
Yeah.
to just like throw ideas at you,
We'll
and
do
then
an
you run
IRL
with it.
jam.
Yeah, we'll do a jam in New York when I'm out there. Um, okay, perfect. Polina, anything else before we move to rapid fire? I guess.
I think we have the
Yeah.
rapid fire now.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, all right. So I'll kick it off and then Pauline, we can go back and forth maybe, but we'll kick it off. So most underrated marketing tactic in like the space, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I think like storytelling, just
Yeah.
like that authentic storytelling, sharing your journey, sharing the why.
Proof point.
Building in
Right
public.
here. Building in public.
What's
Uh
the most overrated one?
Airdrops.
yeah.
Uh,
I think
yeah.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
uh which crypto brands or projects are crushing it that you want to give roses to, as our friend Louis would say?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Louis.
Mm.
I think like what Louis is doing right now with storytelling is
Yeah.
gorgeous. I think he's really like tapped into something really new and unique with the way that he's doing visuals, and
Yeah.
it's amazing to see because like literally last year Singapore, he was still figuring out how to use the manual settings on his camera, and I was making him like do free photo shoots for me. And
Yeah.
so like from there to now, like see the content he's producing, it's amazing. So yeah, I mean, Sofon's killing it. The new like
Yeah.
EF and
Yeah.
Louis collaborating means sick to me as well. But again, it's just that like authentic, people front and center is what I really love about them.
I love that. Yeah. And it
Okay.
is crazy, honestly, thinking through like how far yourself, friends like Louis, and then even things like EF and like so much can change in a year, I guess,
Yeah,
is really like
100%.
time flies in this space. And Polina, you want to take it away with the last one?
Yeah. Looking back at the past year or so, what's your biggest learning as a founder in this space?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think like there's been a lot. I think like especially this year because it's been like one of the most rewarding years of my life, but also definitely one of the most challenging ones for a lot of reasons. I think the one learning I could really say I've taken away from all of this is just like bet on yourself and believe in yourself because
Mm,
I've had a ton of reasons over the past year to give up.
mm,
Even like deciding to build offline protocol instead of my highest offer, I've said this publicly, so I can say it here as well, was $600,000 my first year.
uh,
For a lot of money.
Mm.
I've like never seen that much money in my life.
mm,
And to them, is a bet, right? And like it could have very much failed, but I just had for some reason stupid conviction that like it's gonna
yeah,
work out. And I think if you feel that way, like bet on yourself and believe in yourself and continue to do it because even 6 months later on offline after launching, people were still shit talking me in group chats. It happened again like 2 months ago or 1 month ago when Jack Dorsey launched BitChat. Like, people were
Yeah.
like, offline's finished, like all of this. So you gotta like just continue believing in yourself, showing up and doing it if like that's what you're passionate about. So I think that's like the biggest learning for me.
Bravo.
I love that.
And I remember it's so funny when that Jack Dorsey moment happened. It's kind of like, and then you kind of jujitsu'd that whole thing, and you're like, and now was he follows you, or you guys? He was like, you can
Yeah,
all
I
be
mean,
friends,
he's
right?
amazing, right? But it was funny because the day he announced BitChat, everyone was like, offline protocol's finished. The next day when he gave us a shout out, those same people were hyping us up online like they're our biggest supporters. Like, so
Bunch of
you can't really
snakes,
help
man.
it, right? Yeah, you just have
Yeah.
to like in yourself against all odds, and that's what I'm focused on. Just tune out the noise and like continue to do what we need to do.
My personal belief is, and it's not just me. I think there's like a quote or whatever, but it's like if you don't have any haters, like you're not doing anything right. Like you gotta have conviction. You gotta believe in something, and there's always gonna be haters, right?
Yeah,
You can't please
100%.
everyone. So I love it, dude. You're amazing. Last thing, before we sign off, where can people find you? What's the call to action? What's coming up? Anything exciting that people should be keeping their eyes peeled for in the coming months?
Yeah, Doc.
Ooh, check them out on TikTok. Is it the
yeah.
same handles as Offline
Yeah,
Protocol?
offline,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
firmly
Nice.
for our messaging app download, and that's it. Just keep an eye out. Offline Pay early beta should be coming out soon. So yeah, get in before we start rolling out invites for that.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. This was incredible. I hope to see you soon. I think I'll try and make it to New York in September, and we can link then. But until then, I'll see you online. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for hopping on and telling your story, and I'll see you soon, buddy. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Have a good one.